The living room of my childhood home felt smaller now, crowded with moving boxes and heavy with 3 decades of memories. The worn leather couch where Dad taught me about investments, the kitchen table where Mom helped with homework. All tagged for the estate sale. We just couldn't keep up with the property taxes, Mom explained, her voice cracking as she wrapped another photo frame in bubble wrap. The neighborhood's gotten so expensive since all these tech companies moved in. Dad sat in his old armchair, clutching the realtor's contract like a lifeline. 7 offers over asking price, he said, trying to sound proud instead of devastated. Everyone wants to tear down these old houses and build modern mansions. I watched them from the bay window seat where I'd spent countless hours reading and later learning to code. They didn't know about the shell company I'd created, or the fact that I'd been quietly buying up properties on our street for the past year. The couple buying the house seems nice, Mom continued, more to convince herself than me. Young tech executives. They'll probably modernize everything, but at least they're not developers. I pulled out my phone, opening an app that looked like a standard investment portfolio tracker. In reality, it was a custom interface for managing my real estate holdings. Over $4 billion worth of properties across 3 continents. About that, I said carefully, there's something you should know about the buyers. Dad looked up, frowning at my tone. What do you mean? The realtor said they're already approved for the mortgage. They are, I nodded. By my bank. Your bank. Mom paused her packing. Honey, I know your tech job pays well, but since when do you own a bank? I took a deep breath. Since last year. Along with most of this neighborhood. The realtor's contract slipped from Dad's fingers, floating to the floor like a surrendering flag. What? He whispered. I turned my phone's display toward them, showing a map of our neighborhood. Properties highlighted in blue, my properties, covered nearly every lot for 6 blocks. Remember when I said I was working on some real estate software? I watched their faces as understanding slowly dawned. It wasn't just software. I've been using predictive analytics to identify undervalued properties before the tech boom drove prices up. Mom sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. But this house, we already signed. With Horizon Properties LC, I finished. My holding company. I'm the buyer, Mom. I've been buying everything in the neighborhood to prevent developers from turning it into luxury condos. Dad picked up the contract with shaking hands, reading the fine print he'd probably skimmed before. His eyes widened as he recognized the corporate structure. The same one he'd taught me about during our Sunday investment lessons years ago. How? He managed. These properties must be worth about $400 million for this neighborhood alone, I said quietly. But that's just a small part of the portfolio. Mom's face cycled through emotions. Confusion, disbelief, and finally a glimmer of understanding as she looked at my simple clothes. Not the bargain store items she'd assumed, but custom-made pieces that cost more than their mortgage. Your apartment in the city, she said slowly. The one you said you were just renting. I own the building, I admitted. Along with most of that block. The tech companies needed office space and I saw the opportunity before they did. Dad was still staring at the contract, his decades of real estate experience finally kicking in as he recognized the sophisticated legal framework. These clauses. This isn't just property acquisition. This is community preservation, I finished. Every purchase comes with guarantees to maintain the neighborhood's character. No demolitions, no luxury developments. Just careful modernization and affordable housing programs. I stood up, walking to the kitchen where Mom's old recipe box sat among the packing materials. Inside, behind the dog-eared cards, I pulled out a folded document. Remember when you taught me about compound interest, Dad? How you said the key to real estate was buying at the right time. I handed him the paper. My first property purchase agreement, dated 5 years ago. I bought the Wilson house when old Mrs. Wilson needed to move to assisted living. That was you. Mom gasped. But they said some investment company paid her full price and let her stay rent-free until she passed. I nodded. That was my test case. Proof that you could make money in real estate without destroying communities. Dad's hands shook as he read the document. This portfolio structure. It's brilliant. The way you've layered the holdings to maximize tax efficiency while maintaining community control. I had a good teacher, I smiled. All those Sunday lessons about property law and market dynamics? I was paying attention. The afternoon sun streamed through the bay window, highlighting the dust motes dancing around the moving boxes. Outside, children played on the sidewalk. Children whose families could still afford to live here because my company kept rents stable. But why keep it secret? Mom asked, her voice small. Why let us worry about selling the house? I moved to the living room wall where photos chronicled our family history. Because I needed to prove something. Not just to you but to the whole industry. That real estate doesn't have to be about maximizing profit at any cost. Opening my portfolio app again, I showed them the full scope of my holdings. Entire neighborhoods and tech hubs across the country, all managed with the same philosophy. Preserve, protect, profit, in that order. The app you're always checking, Dad realized. It's not social media. It's a command center, I explained. Every property, every tenant, every community initiative, all managed through predictive algorithms I designed. We can spot market trends 6 months before traditional investors, identify at-risk properties before they're even listed. Mom was looking around the living room with new eyes, seeing beyond the moving boxes to the home they thought they were losing. So we don't have to move? Her voice held equal parts hope and uncertainty. Better than that, I said, pulling up another document on my phone. I'm putting the house in a special trust. You'll live here as long as you want, but it's protected. No one can ever tear it down or force you out. Dad's realtor instincts finally kicked in fully. The whole neighborhood. You must have spent less than you'd think, I smiled. When you can predict market movements and automate property management, the margins are actually quite good. Plus, happy tenants make better investments than luxury condos. I walked to the bay window, watching as more kids joined the group playing outside. Remember when developers tried to buy the park last year? Wanted to build high-rises. They nodded. The community had fought the plan but lacked the resources to stop it. Check who owns the park now, I said. Along with the community center and the old library. Dad quickly scrolled through the property maps on my phone, his eyes widening. You're not just preserving houses. I'm preserving a community, I finished. The way you always taught me real estate should work. The next hour transformed our living room into something between a corporate boardroom and a family therapy session. Mom kept touching the walls as if to reassure herself they were still hers, while Dad pored over property documents on my tablet, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he absorbed the full scope of my real estate empire. This is extraordinary, he muttered, swiping through financial statements. The way you've structured the holdings, it's like a shield around the entire community. I pulled up a holographic display from my phone, technology my company had developed specifically for urban planning. The neighborhood appeared in miniature above our coffee table, each property glowing with data points. Blue properties are under our direct control, I explained. Green ones are protected through community trusts. Red indicates potential acquisition targets. Mom leaned forward, fascinated despite her lingering shock. The Anderson place is red. Are they selling? They're 3 months behind on their property taxes, I said quietly. But they don't know that we've already paid them through a community assistance program. The kids shouldn't have to leave their school district. The Andersons. Dad's voice caught. They were at our church potluck last week. Never mentioned they were struggling. Most people don't, I said, adjusting the display to show economic stress indicators across the neighborhood. That's why we built an AI system to predict financial hardship before it becomes critical. We've prevented 27 foreclosures in this neighborhood alone last year. A notification popped up on my phone. Another property acquisition had just completed in Seattle. My empire grew by another $50 million, but I dismissed the alert. Today wasn't about money. But how did you start all this? Mom asked, still trying to reconcile her daughter's success with her memories of my childhood bedroom coding sessions. Property isn't cheap even 5 years ago. I smiled, pulling up an old photo on my phone. Remember this? They leaned in to see a teenage version of myself standing proudly in front of a rickety food truck. My first business venture, selling smoothies at tech conferences. That silly smoothie truck? Mom looked confused. The one we thought was just a summer job? That silly truck was parked outside major tech companies every day, I explained. I wasn't just selling smoothies. I was gathering data. listening to developers talk about which neighborhoods their companies were expanding into. Then I wrote an algorithm to predict property values based on tech sector growth. Dad's eyes widened with understanding. You saw the boom coming. Better than that, I pulled up another document. I helped shape it. Those smoothie customers. They became my first investors. They trusted my market analysis because I understood both tech and real estate. The hologram shifted to show my first major acquisition. A seemingly worthless block of warehouses that now housed one of the city's biggest tech campuses. 10 million in seed funding became 50 million in property value within 6 months, I continued. Then 100 million, then $1 billion. But I never forgot what you taught me, Dad. Real estate isn't just about buildings. It's about people. Mom was staring at the moving boxes scattered around the room. So all this packing was unnecessary, I admitted. But I needed to understand how it felt. What families go through when they think they're losing their homes. It's helped me design better protection programs. A gentle chime from my phone interrupted us. My assistant reminding me about the board meeting I was technically supposed to be attending. Speaking of programs, I said, pulling up a new document, there's something else you should see. The hologram transformed into a detailed plan for the neighborhood's future. Not sterile modern developments, but thoughtfully upgraded homes maintaining their historic character. Community gardens in empty lots, small business incubators in unused spaces, and most importantly, guaranteed affordable housing for long-term residents. This is what we're actually going to do with the neighborhood, I explained. Not tear it down but lift it up. And I want you both to help run it. Us. Dad's voice cracked slightly. But we're just the people who taught me that community matters, I finished. Who showed me that real success isn't about how much you own, but how many people you can help. The sunset painted our old living room in shades of gold, casting long shadows across the moving boxes that now seemed more like props in an elaborate play. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing with notifications, property closings, market updates, board member inquiries, but for once I let them wait. There's something else you need to see, I said, pulling up a new holographic display. Remember the Henderson building downtown? Dad's expression darkened. The one that forced out all those small businesses last year? Turned them into luxury boutiques. Check the ownership records as of this morning. He tapped through the documents, then froze. You didn't. I did, I nodded. And the first thing we're doing is inviting all those businesses back. With 10-year leases at their original rates. Mom wiped tears from her eyes. The bakery where we got your birthday cakes opens again next month, I smiled. Along with Mr. Chen's bookstore and the old music shop. Some things are worth more than maximizing rent per square foot. A sleek black car pulled up outside. My chief operations officer arriving with the community development team. I'd scheduled this meeting weeks ago, knowing my parents would need to see the bigger picture. Come with me, I said, standing up. There's something I want to show you. As we walked outside, neighbors peeked from their windows, probably wondering about the expensive vehicle and well-dressed executives in their modest street. Mrs. Anderson was watering her flowers, trying not to look worried about her property taxes. Taxes she didn't know were already taken care of. Sarah, Paisio greeted me with a tablet in hand. The Singapore acquisition just closed. You're now the largest community-focused real estate holder in Southeast Asia. Mom stumbled slightly at the casual mention of international holdings. Dad caught her arm, his own expression a mix of pride and lingering shock. Perfect timing, I said, taking the tablet. Pull up Project Phoenix. The holographic display expanded, showing not just our neighborhood but the entire city. Blue Properties, my properties, created a web of protected communities throughout every district. Every highlighted area represents a neighborhood we've saved from developers, I explained. But more importantly, look at the green zones. Dad leaned in, his real estate experience helping him understand first. These are enterprise zones? Community development districts. The future, I corrected. Each green zone is a self-sustaining community hub. Local businesses, affordable housing, education centers, and green spaces, all protected by my company's legal framework. The development team spread out more displays, showing detailed plans for each area. Modern amenities seamlessly integrated with historic architecture. Community gardens on every block. Free Wi-Fi and technology education centers in repurposed buildings. But this must cost. Mom began. Less than you think, I said. Without greedy developers, sustainable growth works better. Happy residents stay, care for their homes, and attract good businesses. Mrs. Anderson stopped pretending to water her flowers. I waved her over. Remember you wanted to run for the community council? She nodded. The elections today, I said, just as cars pulled up with neighbors, business owners, and leaders I'd quietly supported for months. Dad frowned. What's happening? The first meeting of the Community Preservation Council, I said, handing him a folder. I want you to lead it. Inside was a plan for ethical, community-led development. Everything he'd dreamed of doing. I was listening to those Sunday lessons, Dad, I said. I just made them bigger. Mom recognized faces from church and school. They're all staying, she asked. They're protected, I said. And soon we'll do this in every city we work in. My phone buzzed. More communities joining us. The empire was growing, but in a way that served people. Dad looked at the moving boxes. You knew we wouldn't need them? I glanced at our home and the gathering crowd. Sometimes you have to almost lose something to know its value.